Hello and welcome to Technically Speaking, where scientists and engineers come together to chat about a common interest, share knowledge and satisfy some curiosity. I'm Ellie, and today I'm joined by Laura and Antonia to talk about leather made from T-Rex collagen and other alternative forms of leather. I brought this to the team because leather and T-Rex is not really something that you expect to see in the same sentence, and I was intrigued. I was confused. Laura, were you similarly fascinated by this topic?
I was. I thought, hang on, how? This has to be something that's done in the lab, right? They're not just digging T-Rex collagen out of the ground. That sounds like craziness. And yeah, it is grown in the lab. So there's this whole biotech thing going on that I thought, well, you've mentioned it, so I have to look into it now.
Yeah, you've got no choice once I bring up that sort of topic. Antonia, what about you?
Once you brought it up again, I thought, how, why, what would you use it for? And is it more sustainable if it's lab grown versus the plethora of alternative vegan leather options?
Yes, and boy oh boy, do we have a lot to say about this. So, first off, we should explain, like Laura said, that it is actually grown in a lab, and we aren't bringing back T-Rexes to use as cows, effectively, as a new form of leather.
We're not cloning dinosaurs, growing them to maturity to then skin and make leather.
No, but golly, would that be a Jurassic Park gone wrong? So this is actually from a luxury fashion conglomerate. More than one company, anyway. It's from VML, the Organoid Company, and Lab Grown Leather. They were also the project that made mammoth meatballs, the giant mammoth meatballs. So they do have some sort of history of this, I don't know, bringing back dead things. And basically they're trying to create T-Rex leather from fossilised T-Rex collagen.
I don't think they are, though. They're using their DNA to then make collagen, because that's what this company's remit is.
Yes.
They seem to have latched on to the fact that some dinosaur collagen still exists in the world, and it's lasted for millions of years.
Presumably like at least 66 million. Yeah, so they're engineering cells using synthetic DNA, presumably that they've got from fossils, etc., of T-Rexes. And then that is creating some sort of scaffolding, and then they're merging other cells onto this scaffolding. I mean, to be honest, it sounds like more trouble than it's worth.
That was kind of my thought. I'm not too sure they are using a scaffold. This is one of the big things about lab-grown leather, to use a scaffold or not. Well, even going as far as medical applications of building skin, which is apparently quite tricky.
Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and I think the article that I had read said they were doing it scaffold-free to let the cells do as they please. Is that important?
I suppose it might be. Yeah, scaffold-free was what I should have said, not a scaffolding approach. Yeah.
I have to ask, if it doesn't have a scaffolding, what do the cells even look like? Because obviously our skin does have collagen and other bits, so are they just cells just floating or glued together? I don't know. I do not know what this looks like.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I guess, I mean, biologically you probably wouldn't have a scaffold. This is how I assume how our bodies work, and they just produce cells that then go on to produce stuff like collagen.
Yeah, I guess they create it themselves, right? Like, they don't have a scaffold, the cells are just merging however they please into some sort of leather-like structure, perhaps?
Presumably. This is what I wonder, having not done this in the lab.
You don't just have T-Rex DNA on your shelf just ready to go.
Funnily enough. So leather is skin that has been chemically altered, right?
Yes.
To remove the water and replace that water with, like, I think some sort of filler in some cases.
They call it this, it's tanned, right? This chemical treatment. Like, this is traditional, like, cow leather would be tanned. But they are saying that it's structurally identical.
I'm not sure how if it's a T-Rex, how would they know it's structurally identical? This is what I don't get. Collagen to me is just collagen. It doesn't matter where it's come from. It's exactly the same chemical structure.
Okay, well then that's the point then, isn't it? So then the T-Rex collagen is identical to the cow collagen, presumably.
Yes, so it's just collagen. Why you don't need a T-Rex?
Why do you need a T-Rex?
This reminded me a little bit of biodiesel. You get a different biological source. You still get diesel as the actual chemical compound that does the thing. Unless it's the other small percentage of other stuff around it that matters.
Can you tell if you have a piece of finished leather what animal it's come from? Presumably you could. So it must be some different.
But then that's not the collagen making the difference, is it?
It's the DNA of the cells.
It's like all the hair and the skin that was there before.
Yeah, I don't know how much of that is necessarily preserved in the tanning process. It's not something I looked into. I just looked in like how do you grow stuff in the lab, really, not how do you tan leather.
Okay, so maybe let's dive into that then. So we know that this is laboratory grown, whatever it is, whatever it comes out as. Laura, you said you looked into this. Is it hard to grow leather in a lab? Can you grow leather in a lab?
So I think what they're doing is growing a skin-like material and then tanning it. I found quite a helpful review from someone who I think was doing their PhD at the University of Manchester, because it looks very much like their literature review in a thesis that they've published online. It's very helpful.
Very helpful when you're trying to find out about this.
Exactly. The leather doesn't need blood vessels and glands and things in it, just the collagen really, whereas if you wanted to grow skin, you need all of those other components as well to have healthy skin that's going to survive.
Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, so it's easier to grow something that will become leather than it is to regrow skin in the lab.
I also, because they're not growing T-Rex skin for a living T-Rex, are they? They're just making skin to do whatever, to make leather. So then it's like a lot easier if you take out the fact that it doesn't ever have to live, in inverted commas.
Exactly. So I presume what they're doing is they've got some synthetic T-Rex DNA. They're using that to produce some cells, and then they're encouraging those cells to produce collagen.
Okay.
There are different types of collagen in your skin, it's worth noting. So the stuff on the top includes some type 3 collagen, which is a little bit finer than type 1 collagen. But the type 1 stuff, which is the main thing in your skin, gives it its strength, whereas the type 3 gives it its suppleness. So depending on which part of the skin you're taking your leather from affects the grade of the leather, effectively. So I assume they're considering that when they're growing their collagen to have both types.
I'm sure if people were really into their luxury handbags or leather items, they would probably know a bit more about these things like top grain or goats or sheep skin leather and all the difference between them, but I don't. I know roughly some things are softer than others.
Yes. I did do a little bit of research into what we can make leather out of, and it's pretty much anything that's got skin is the long and short of it. It could be all sorts, but we will come back to that to dive in a bit, because I'm still intrigued by this lab-grown leather situation. Is anyone else doing this? Presumably not T-Rexes, but just like as a vegan alternative, or as a, alternative to like cows.
Yeah, well, apparently the forerunner for doing the lab-grown stuff is by a company called Modern Meadows. And I read somewhere they're using yeast cells. Then I also read something about using cow cells as well. So I'm not entirely sure what they're using. But they're using some cells to produce some collagen, and then putting some more cells on top and getting them to grow collagen, then stacking this sort of 15 layers deep. But it's still only like 0.1 of a mil thick, or thin, if you like.
Wow.
So it's not the same as real skin. So it's not as thick or as durable as real leather.
What are they using it for? Are they making like yeast handbags, or are they making
Yeah, from what I've read, nothing's really in production yet because it just doesn't have the same quality. Some places are sort of sending them out as sort of example bits of leather that you can't do anything with. And it sounds like it's more expensive as well because I guess the lab process is so intensive. It takes about 6 weeks.
This seems like, again, more trouble than it's worth. Like, we've got a lot of cows. Surely let's just stick to what we've got.
Yeah, and if it's 0.1 millimetre before tanning, does it lose some of that thickness?
That's so thin.
During processing, and so it'd be, I can't even picture, like, could it be used instead for like skin grafts or like a medical application if it's that thin?
I don't know if you'd use the T-Rex or the yeast cells, but I presume that's what some medical research is looking into. This apparently is also quite niche. I just thought this was a big thing because everyone has skin. But apparently not a lot of people need skin grafts in the Western world, so it's not that well researched.
Oh, I recently did an article, this is a slight non sequitur, about 3D printed skin for burn victims, and they put the cells of the person that has been burned into the machine, and then it like robotically prints skin
Whoa.
which is very cool.
Sounds very niche.
Yeah.
Does it print fully formed skin, or does it then need to grow its own skin a bit more?
I think there's still like a healing process involved, but it was for people that were burn victims. So it was to heal not the burn, but the skin graft site in like a more speedy, hygienic way to like reduce risk of infection, because then it was their cells that were like helping to repair where they'd taken the skin from. It was really interesting.
Yeah, and I did read that growing of skin or something that will become leather could be made better by including a scaffold. But the challenge there is it needs to be permeable enough for nutrients and oxygen to pass through it so your cells can grow and produce the collagen. And the scaffold would be something like, if you've ever had surgery, like a dissolvable stitches that they put in.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Yeah, I think it's made from something like polylactic acid, and once it's done its job, it just disappears, breaks up
Fizzles
into
away.
amines. Yeah.
I mean, that is quite... I can see where they're coming from, of that. To have something to grow on seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
But again, I guess if you've got to get rid of it to make it pure skin or,
I mean, I don't know if the stuff that's 0.1 mil thick could then be bonded to something, which would be bonded leather, which wouldn't be very high quality. But you could attach it to like a fabric backing. And if that was using some biodegradable glue and woven cotton, that might be stronger. It's one way of doing it.
But then it seems to sort of defeat the purpose.
Yeah, it's not really leather at that point, is it?
And not to get too off topic, but I'm still finding question marks over how biodegradable PLA is as a plastic.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if people are getting confused with the description of industrially compostable or industrially biodegradable, but if people are using it in dressings and it disappears into the person, totally gets broken down, then that sounds biodegradable to me.
Yeah, I guess it depends on the environment it's in, right? And I think it just became more hydrated and bonds gradually break over time. I might be totally misremembering that polylactic acid is used as dissolvable stitches, though.
Okay, so maybe it's a different compound altogether.
Potentially. There are many, I think.
This is interesting because you mentioned that it's more expensive potentially to get this yeast leather, but how does it compare to like waste or chemicals or water? Or like in terms of sustainability, is it better because I guess it's much smaller scale?
Yeah, I wonder about this. What I was reading said that in theory it should be. You don't have to do any pre-tanning, which is where you scrape off the bits of skin that you don't want, drain all the blood out of it, shave off the hair, whatever you're going to do, exfoliate it to remove the dead layer of epithelial cells.
Oh my god, a lot of processes.
Yeah, so fewer processes, therefore less waste seems to be the idea, but they're not actually in full production mode yet. It's just doing something in a lab, and doing stuff in a lab is often quite wasteful because you're doing it at very small scale.
Yeah. Antonia, how does this compare to something like vegan leather or like true plant-based leather? Because that exists, doesn't it?
Yeah, and there are a lot of companies, most notably luxury fashion companies, that are using it. So I don't think it's super affordable and widespread. Well, it depends actually, because there is so many different types of vegan or plant-based leather. To start off with, there's some things rebranding as vegan leather, and I'm not sure it really fits the definition of vegan because they use fossil fuels to make it. So polyurethane and polyvinyl chloride, or vinyl, are being used as branded vegan leather because it's not using animal products, but it's using ancient animal products.
How far back are you going to classify something as an animal? Recently deceased or deceased a long time ago, like the dinosaur?
Yeah, exactly. But if we look at the plant-based ones, if you think of some sort of biological agricultural waste, people have tried to make leather out of it.
I mean, that's a good thing, I guess, if it's waste anyway.
Yeah, that sounds worthy.
It sounds good on the surface.
Uh-oh.
But like Laura and you were talking about having scaffolding or structure, some of them aren't just pure leather. They have some sort of backing on it. And sometimes they use non-biodegradable materials to back it, which makes the whole product non-biodegradable.
Yeah, then you just got a composite that's really difficult to dispose of because it's at least two different things.
Yeah, and some of them are really well bonded together. It's like I've forgotten which one now. Oh, that's it, cactus. So they've got cactus plants, particularly the prickly pear variety, and when the tree is matured, you can peel off the old leaves, mush them up, and then magically make a resin. And my question is all of the product that you needed to make the resin naturally in the cactus, or did they add other stuff to? But because it's a commercial process, they're not really sharing all the finer detail. They just say, make resin, magically form it, and you get leather.
This is what frustrates me a little bit with companies doing research like that. As an academic, you're told to publish, share your work with everyone else. Industry's not the same.
Yeah, they're beyond research because they've made it into a commercial product and people make products out of it now.
Is there not some sort of standard of, like, product? You know, if you're making a handbag out of cactus leather, there's got to be some sort of quality control from an organisation that's not your cactus leather handbag company.
Well, that's it. Yeah, they did get someone else to verify that it's bio-based material, and I think the highest rating they got on one of their fabrics was 65% bio-based.
Okay. Do we know how that compares to, like, normal leather? Because presumably that's higher.
That's a good point, actually. Yeah, and one of the big sort of marketing points that they make out of the vegan leather market is there's a lot less steps. That actually making leather from cattle uses many, many production steps, many chemicals, and some of them are harmful chemicals for the workers involved. Whereas they're saying a lot of the other stuff, you can dry the material in the sun, and then you boil it. I don't know if that's to make it soften, and then somehow treat it and shape it if you want the sort of different patterns like snakeskin style or the traditional cattle grain.
It does crack me up that someone would go to the trouble of creating cactus leather and doing all of that process and then be like, we should put snakeskin on this.
Yeah, let's make it look like an animal. Make it look like something new and interesting, not the same old stuff. Make it obvious that it's a new thing and make it more desirable, therefore.
Yeah.
Yeah, people don't want a new thing. They want the old thing.
Without the guilt.
Yeah, without the guilt.
Maybe, I don't know. I feel like if I were wearing something ethical, I'd want it to be obvious that it was different to normal leather.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Are you trying to blend in but feel good about yourself? Or are you trying to show off that your thing is, you know, ethical and sustainable and hasn't involved killing an animal?
Or even just, I'm not a person that tends to show off, but, you know, setting an example and saying, I do this, you can do it too.
Yeah.
I suppose cork doesn't really hide that it is cork. It's very much got that cork pattern to it.
I've seen that. Like, that was at the Manchester Makers Market. There was a cork stand with, like, bags and belts and all bits and pieces, which I thought was cool. But then I wouldn't say that was an alternative to leather. That's just a cork bag.
Yeah, I'd wonder how long that lasts as well. Is it hard wearing, and therefore do you go through more cork bags, which means more harvesting? Is that less sustainable?
Well, interestingly, I did find a research article that actually compared different properties of the materials, test it against actual leather. So some of the tests they had were flexibility, tensile strength, water permeability, because, yeah, leather is also actually a waterproof material in some cases.
Yeah.
The conclusion wasn't brilliant. It wasn't a great news story for the plant-based alternatives.
I mean, there is a reason that we've been using leather for however many hundreds of years, right? Like traditional cow leather and many, many other types of leather. So I was looking into this, but it turns out people aren't raising cows for leather specifically.
Ah.
So this is usually what they're calling either a byproduct or a co-product of the meat industry. So especially for things like cows, pigs and goats, the animal will be slaughtered usually for meat, and the hide, I looked at a few different ones, but they said the hide is usually only 2 to 5% of a cow's value. So if you're raising cows, that's obviously costing you a lot of land and water and feed. So the money that you're making from beef, let's say, is way, way higher than the money that you're making from the leather. But if you're slaughtering the cow anyway, you might as well make that extra cash.
And then presumably the leather producers get hold of it and then put this really high markup on for having processed it and sell it for a lot of money.
Yeah, I guess whoever's doing the turning of the hide into leather, into selling it to Hermes is... I don't know, raking it in. However, if you're going to go exotic, then the complete opposite is true. So it's not a byproduct at all. And if you're making crocodile, then most of the value of the crocodile is in the hide, which is absolutely unbelievable. And I can't believe it's still a thing. Don't you think this is like, you know how people wearing fur on the runway? was like such a taboo thing.
Yeah, hunting something just for its skin doesn't seem right.
Yeah, crocodile leather's got to go the same way.
Well, if you've gone to all that effort of catching what is allegedly quite a dangerous animal, wouldn't you then make full use of it?
Yeah, surely.
You must be able to eat crocodile meat.
Oh God. Probably. I don't think they're not eating anything weird, are they? Just largely eating fish and small mammals.
You would think so.
Yeah. However, and this is where it gets even more interesting, you can basically make leather out of anything with a skin, including some weird ones. So I did a little bit of digging, and I found that people are making leather out of lionfish, which, if you've not seen them, are like quite spiky looking, brown and white, stripy, big fish that are extremely invasive and damaging to coral reefs. And they're getting indigenous communities to go out onto these reefs and kill the lionfish and collect them, and then they sell the lionfish hides, skin, bodies, to a company, and then the money that they make from selling the lionfish goes back into conservation.
I mean, that is incredible because, yeah, you've made something that was a problem into something that can help solve the problem.
Yeah, so I should proudly wear my lionfish leather in that case. and
Yeah, I
show-
think you can. I think you can proudly wear your lionfish leather.
Yeah, tell everyone I'm being really ethical. Here's why.
On the flip side, I have also got an example of people using mushrooms to make leather.
Oh, I came across them when I was looking at the lab-grown stuff. I didn't look at the detail, but it's basically producing mycelium fibres and then treating that.
Yeah, and it's almost like the opposite of it being a waste product. You're making the mushrooms solely for the purpose of trying to make leather, but you make mushrooms by giving them loads of moisture, and then you're drying them to get rid of all the moisture. It seems like
A waste of water.
yeah, it's like going back to square one where we were with the T-Rex of like, why bother?
Why bother? Yeah, at least the lionfish makes sense because they're ruining the coral reef for all the other fish.
Yeah.
So, like, let's kill them and make something out of it. That makes sense.
I guess if I'm being cynical, it's about how you market it. Like the T-Rex. I mean, it's just because it sounds cool, right?
You're not going to be rocking up to the next podcast meeting in a T-Rex leather jacket. T-Rex boots.
No.
But how would you show that it's T-Rex as well?
Maybe it's not for, I was going to say people like us. The
Yeah.
high fashion people would know that it was T-Rex or kangaroo or walrus leather. Apparently very good for making boats. Is something that I found.
Is that still made, or was that back in the day?
That was back in whatever year it was that people were, indigenous communities were making their own boats. Because you can imagine walrus's quite tough skin, naturally waterproof, long-lasting, also massive, so you're getting a lot of skin for your effort in killing a walrus.
I feel like you just this sounds really macabre, but just hollowing out a walrus and floating around in it.
I totally pictured that
Laura.
too. I thought that too. That must be how they get
No.
there. Because then you've eaten the walrus as well. And then you just got to move the bones, which could actually be, you could use like the bones for like,
Scaffolding.
yes, house scaffolding.
Oh my god. Yeah, there's a lot. When I said anything with the skin can be leather, or at least someone has attempted it, I wasn't kidding. Apparently the strongest leather in the natural world is kangaroo. Most expensive is crocodile or alligator. And if you want to get really fancy, instead of T-Rex, you can go iguana or stingray. Which, I mean, please don't.
No, I like those animals. At least kangaroos are seen as a pest in Australia, aren't they? So although they seem really cute to non-natives, they're actually annoying.
And quite everywhere.
Yeah, you can do with fewer kangaroos.
And yeah, it's not just skin. You can make it out of anything with a fibre, but then you have to apply some sort of resin, something to bond it all together, which is questionable about its origins.
I think there's quite a lot of questionable things about this whole process. Do we even want these things in our lives? Is anyone joining the wait list for a T-Rex leather handbag? T-Rex leather boots, anyone?
Not for T-Rexes. Did you know that's also not the oldest surviving collagen that's been found? I did say it just sounds cool. If the T-Rex is 65 million years, the Lufengosaurus, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, is 195 million years old, and they found some Lufengosaurus collagen in fossils as well.
Wow.
But no one's going to say I've got Lufengosaurus shoes, are they?
I might. That's really amazing.
I mean, if you made a fashion house,
Yeah.
that could be an excellent name for a fashion house.
I mean, I can't feel bad about wearing T-Rex leather boot unless there's some, hidden chemical that's like causing a lot of environmental problems in the making process, because they're all extinct. They've all been extinct for at least 66 million years. So it's not like I'm killing crocodiles or kangaroos or adorable iguanas to make leather.
I feel like it's probably not. It's like one step removed from just digging up some oil and turning that into a fake leather, though. It's still dinosaurs.
To me, it's the entire energy use to make it that. It's like, there's plenty of other things we could do that are a little bit easier, that lend itself to being made into leather.
Is any leather better than getting a bag off Primark? You know, £10 handbag from Primark.
That could be made of anything.
Anything.
It could be like just a cotton thing that someone in a sweatshop's produced.
Yeah.
Versus some leather that came from the US from a cow that was probably treated quite well. I don't know. I suppose it depends how morally opposed you are to killing animals and shipping their skin across the world.
Yeah, because there is a lot of unethical practices in fashion. So, yeah, would you weigh up the welfare of the animals, the welfare of the workers?
The supply chain, the cost of shipping fibres across the world to be treated and dyed and sewed up and then shipped back to participate in the Primark sale?
Yeah, sustainability is such a difficult topic to get your head around because there are so many components.
So many.
I mean, what I like about the leather is, like, most of our shoes used to be made with leather soles, right? But now they're made from synthetics and they wear down over time. So you're just leaking microplastics into the environment.
Unless it's natural rubber.
It seems unlikely though, doesn't it? And how would you know?
How would you know? Yeah.
But if you could market them as, it doesn't have to be T-Rex leather, but as leather-soled shoes that are perfectly natural and it's fine that they're going to wear down and you can replace them or compost them at the end, I think I'd go for that. I think I'd prefer it. I do a lot of walking.
I could be into a compostable shoe, because also if your shoes break, if they can't be like remade or repaired by a cobbler, they're going to landfill, aren't they? So if it's a compostable shoe, then I'm into it.
Well, that's it. I have a small stockpile of shoes that I no longer wear, but I don't want to throw away because I'd rather them be used. But then apparently all my waste is used in some way. Nothing really goes to landfill near me anymore. A lot of it is burned for energy.
Oh, wow.
But in the waste reuse hierarchy, incineration is only one step above landfill.
Ah, good point.
So if I can stick it on my compost and grow some tomatoes out of my T-Rex leather shoes... Very expensive compost.
Very expensive compost.
I keep going back to the mushroom because it perplexes me that it was $500 per square meter. Like fabric, you know, say cotton fabric, you could get that for £10 to £20 per meter, and the width is usually over a meter. That is more than a square meter for a 50th of the price.
Yeah, but what about the implications? How much are you going to pay to assuage your guilt about sustainability? How much is it really worth? Or is it even better in the first place? Is it worth paying? We don't know. It's too big a topic. We can't possibly comprehend it all in one podcast episode. And we have comprehended a lot so far. So if we start at the beginning, we start with the T-Rex. I don't think we ever really left the T-Rex behind, but they are making a leather-like substance, a skin, a collagen fibre. But fortunately, we probably are still a way off from T-Rex leather handbags and jackets. We then looked at how you could grow skin and leather in a lab, which, though possible, is perhaps not the easiest thing to do and is pretty time-consuming. There are a lot of vegan/plant-based alternatives to leather, from mushrooms to cork to cactuses. And I feel like maybe sticking with cows is the best option for the time being, as at least it is a byproduct of the meat industry. And I couldn't bear to skin anything remotely close to an iguana or a kangaroo.
However, I'm excited by the research, though. Not for the T-Rex stuff, but for actually growing skin that is useful for people, for wound healing.
Yeah.
And then for more sustainable leather generally. I think that's a good thing.
Yes. I think it's good that we've got all these alternatives. Maybe leather in general will go the way of fur, or try and go the way of fur, and we'll stop raising animals purely for their skin in the future. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode of Technically Speaking.
The views expressed in this podcast belong entirely to the person that said them. They do not represent any industry or organisation. If you enjoyed listening to these views, it would really help us out if you could rate us, leave a review and tell a friend. This podcast was sponsored by no one, but if you're interested in funding us to continue to have frank discussions about science and engineering, please get in touch.